Now let's get to part one of a conversation I recently had with one of my favorite people from the city of Portland, Interim Administrator Michael Jordan. He has a unique mix of extensive government work in leadership positions and an insider's look at how the machine that is the city of Portland really works. And he's one of the main folks on the inside now trying to make it better. The big takeaway tonight, the city budget is in big trouble. In part because we're spending more than $100 million a year on homeless programs that we did not pay for 4 years ago. And also all those vacancies in the downtown office towers, those are torpedoing the value and drastically lowering the amount of taxes that they pay to the city. So that's bad news for the budget. And that also leads to the possibility of layoffs in the city government. Things are going to be tighter. You're looking at right sizing. So does one organization have too many of this person or too little of that person? Do you see any sort of layoffs coming?
Well, I would hope that would be a last resort for us, but I think we may actually see layoffs this cycle. We'll look at, materials and services budgets. We'll look at, can we do business more efficiently in other ways? Vacancies, we have a significant number at any given moment, somewhere between 5 and 6% of our 7,000 positions are vacant, and for different reasons in different bureaus, obviously. But when we have to constrain the workforce, the first look we'll look at are vacant positions.
Can we just live without those for a year or two?
How long have they been vacant? Why are they vacant? And you can't eliminate all those. You have to replace some of those folks. But that's the first place we'll look when it comes to people, before we actually have to move to laying off folks.
Do you remember the last time there was a layoff, or I can look it up? Because I don't really remember in my 34 years here.
The mayor asked for 5% cut budgets last year.
But don't they always do that?
No, they don't always do that. Last year was the first time in my 9 years that we had a cut budget as guidance to build a budget with cuts. And I don't know exactly, I'd have to go back and look, but I would not be surprised if there were some layoffs last year. Not many, but some. There may be more this year. And this constraint is going to go on for, I would say, a few years. And I should explain a little bit, because the constraint is different in different parts of the organization, but there's almost nowhere I can look from the chair I sit in and not see a budget that's got problems.
All right, and that is a big deal, because the chair that Michael Jordan is sitting in as city administrator, he can pretty much see everything. Now, he's going to explain where the problems are. Let's start with the general fund, which is sort of like one of the main checkbooks that the city uses to pay for things.
The general fund has two problems. One, we are running a number of very expensive programs that didn't even exist 4 years ago. The shelters, 1,000 shelter beds that have to be run around the city, all of the street coordination that goes on, the people that go out and meet with homeless people and navigation. We're paying for an office that does that. The incident reduction program, which are the ones that clean up camps, clean up litter, take care of all those issues. We're spending, I would say, well north of $100 million on that didn't exist 5 years ago in the general fund.
But wait, there's more. Half the money that comes to the city is from property taxes. And that's where the downtown vacancies are a real problem. The property values are down so much that they're reducing the overall percentage of new tax money flowing into the city.
On the revenue side of the equation, I'll just talk about property taxes. Number one source of revenue for all cities in Oregon, not just Portland. It's about 50% of our revenue, our general fund revenue, comes from property taxes. Normally, with the constitution that we have around property taxes that are limited, but property taxes are allowed to grow about 3% per year. And then if there is new construction, you can add to that a little bit. So our property tax revenue has grown from 3 to 5% per year, depending on the amount of new growth, new development. This year, we're anticipating that property taxes will grow less than 1%.
Wow.
That is primarily because of the shrinking value of downtown property. So it is now gone below assessed value. Real market value has now gone below assessed value and is now actually constraining the amount of property taxes that are collected on downtown, to the point that our total property taxes now drop below 1%.
Wow. So a big office building that used to be, for example, 100 million is now the real market value is maybe 60 or 70 million, even though it's assessed at above that.
Well, assessed value is what gets taxed in under the new system. And for the most part, assessed value is well below real market value for most property in the city. But downtown, because of vacancy rates, those big buildings are assessed on the amount of income they make.
Oh.
And because not only are they 30% vacant, but the leases that are coming up for renewal are being renewed at much lower rates. Even if they're getting renewed at lower rates. And so the income off that property has dropped dramatically, and that's how they get taxed. And so they've dropped, actually used to be real market value was like double assessed value. Now the real market has dropped below assessed.
Wow.
And so that's a drain on the amount of new property tax money from the rest of the city.
And that's a big part of why things look so grim. So instead of getting 3 to 5% increase in property tax money, which makes up half the budget, the city of Portland is expecting more like 1%. Which led me to wonder why the city budget has to cover something that arguably the county should be doing when it comes to all those homeless programs. Why can't the city just stop paying that $100 million and just give all that work to the county?
Wow, there's a good question. You know, I think the reason we're in the sheltering business at all, which is the biggest part of that amount, is because the county was not in that business. And I think Mayor Wheeler, a few years back, just decided we're not going to be able to get the county to do this, and we believe this can be a good way to approach the homeless problem. And so we just started doing it. And it has grown, and to be fair, in 2020 and 2021, we got quite a bit of federal money through the ARPA program, but that was one-time money. And so we actually built that program with one-time, much of it, not all, but much of it one-time federal money. And to, I think, Mayor Wheeler's great credit, because he couldn't even get anybody to stand next to him at a podium when he announced this program 4 years ago. Now, the county is helping to pay for some of that program, and through the intergovernmental agreement that you've heard a lot about lately, that we are still in. That agreement really transitions those shelters to the county, and they will pay for them in the future. Now, how quickly that transition can occur, we have a 3-year agreement with them. We're hopeful that that transition occurs next year. But I also know that that's a really complicated transition. So we're hoping, you know, that we'll get some relief there. There are challenges with the money that the county gets from the metro income tax, and that is also perhaps in flux. Metro is looking at potentially going back to voters with a restructured
maybe increase
tax
the income where you get hit with it?
That might increase the income, might lower the rate of the payment, might also carve off some of that money to go to actually building affordable housing. Right now, it's restricted to only services that support the houseless effort. So if the amount is constrained by changing the way the tax is collected, and you carve off a fairly substantial amount to actually build housing, that leaves a constrained amount to pay for services like sheltering.
Yeah.
And so it's a challenging environment and really complicated, and I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I think it all adds up to a pretty challenging time for the next few years.
Okay, so we've learned so far that the city budget will be very tight this next year and might actually force layoffs. Part of the problem is lower values for office buildings downtown because they have so many empty offices and empty floors. That means less tax money for the city. We've also learned the city is paying $100 million a year for homeless services, further straining an already strained budget. Moving on, we're going to look at internal changes and how things are improving. In case you've not been following along, the city changed its structure on July 1st. There's now a city administrator running Portland. They are appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. But instead of elected politicians running various bureaus and not having to cooperate with each other, now it's Michael Jordan running the show with the help of several deputy administrators and bureau directors. The politicians are kept off to the side. I asked him, how's that going?
You know, I would say better than expected. As if we knew exactly what to expect. Maybe we didn't, but I think I'm already, like every week, I'm in meetings with folks, and you literally are seeing the lights come on about, in a new organization, how we can collaborate differently, and people actually literally saying, we can do that. And
instead of that's just, not our department,
yeah,
we don't handle that.
We can't possibly do that. You know, things like sharing of staff, things like pulling people together on a project really quickly and quicker turnover and quicker response times. And the deputies are the ones that are making that happen, and they're collaborating with each other for the different service areas, if you recall. And so I'm seeing glimmers of what you would hope the city would be like in the next year or two or three. So people are adjusting as humans do. They're highly adaptable, and you change the situation and their behavior changes pretty quickly. And don't get me wrong, there are still plenty of challenges that will take, like I said, years for us to work out. Culture doesn't change overnight, but I'm encouraged by the progress so far.
You don't find that there's a block that's fighting you?
Oh, definitely. I mean,
definitely there is.
A block is probably too strong a word, but there's certainly isolated patches of parts of the organization where
they don't want to
let's
change.
just say they need to be reminded that there's somebody who can call the ball now and says this is the way it's going to be. And I realize that in the old days you may have been able to just disappear and not conform to what we need done, and just wait it out. And in the old days, when there were commissioners in charge, and you didn't report to the other commissioner, and so why did you have to do that? And guess what? Now everybody reports to one person, and the person says, we're going to get this done, and figure out a way to do it. And again, behavior takes time, and people have been doing it a certain way for a long time. But I'm again really encouraged by how the organization is responding.
And in case you didn't get it earlier, that one person that can call the ball, that's him. Jordan says the cooperation within city government has now led to creative solutions that are happening in our neighborhoods all around Portland.
We now have a program, you may have heard of it, that actually holds problem solver meetings across the city. Every 2 weeks, we hold 14, I want to say, meetings across the city. It's 12 or 14, I can't remember exactly. But this group is called PMO, and I believe that's the Physical and Environmental Management Office. I think that's what it's called. I may be wrong there. But they really are bringing to bear the power of a really large organization to, in real time, solve problems in neighborhoods. And we're not talking about, rebuilding a street. We're talking about graffiti on road signs. We're talking about garbage along a roadway. We're talking about a houseless camp that needs to be taken care of, about derelict RVs along a street. And I'm not here to say that it's perfect in every case, but that program now has the ability, because it is run out of the executive office. It was formerly run out of the mayor's office, but now it reports to me as the administrator. And if we're having challenges with getting 1, 2, 3 or more bureaus engaged in solving a particular problem, there's somebody who can make that happen now very quickly. And so our ability to be responsive, I think, is enhanced by having not only that group of folks who are out in neighborhood literally every week, all week, interfacing with community, but on the backside of that, we have an ability now to bring the organization to bear on the problem, I think much more expeditiously.
And that's all happening because the city's structure has changed. While we're talking about smart solutions, here's another one. The city is now taking a hard look at all the vehicles it owns to see if it can save some money by getting rid of some of them.
We're actually going through one of the, I will say, cut concepts that's come out of the city motor pool, the vehicle folks, is to do a much more in-depth examination of all the vehicles at the city. You are absolutely correct that some bureaus do a wonderful job monitoring their vehicles, some not so much. And what we're finding is that there's at least a substantial number of vehicles that aren't being used as much as they could, and perhaps shouldn't even be in the fleet anymore. And so managing the size of the fleet and also managing how that fleet is taken care of so we don't go beyond maintenance protocols, and make sure that not only are the vehicles operational and safe, but also making sure our fleet is optimized and not bigger than it has to be. So we are looking at all those things.
All right, so we've heard that the city is starting to function better. People are cooperating and also being held accountable if they don't want to change their ways. But there are still challenges looming in this new system. For example, it's a little wonky here, but it's important. The city has a lot of rules which are called codes that say how things should be done. That was because you had politicians running these huge departments, and it was clear over time they needed a lot of rules. But now they won't be in control, and the mayor and the city administrator will be instead. But that will also create some gray areas, some fuzzy lines between the mayor's authority and the city councilor's authority.
And so now, because the executive mayor, within the constraint of the budget, really has the ability to say, we're not going to do that way anymore, we're going to do it this way. And the administrator can carry that out. So we are literally removing lots of things from code and putting them in administrative rule that only the mayor will have the authority to change administrative rule, and the administrator. And so where's the edge of the authority for the executive and the legislative body? And what if the legislative body doesn't like the way the mayor is doing things? And how would they voice that? In what way would they do that? And what's that interface? And can a new mayor who maybe cares about a different way to do sheltering than what we have been doing, do they have the authority to just change all of that?
Just wave a magic wand and say not anymore?
Exactly. And so where are the edges of that authority? And I think I mentioned this too.
How do you work that out?
Well, I think I mentioned before that in our previous discussions that I think the most important aspect of this new government and new way of governing is that the mayor and council work together as much as possible. That they're overly communicative with each other about what they want to accomplish, how they think they want to get there. Even if the mayor has the authority to do it all by themselves, they don't have to ask council. They should still be consulting with council and talking with them about where they want to go and how are they going to get there. It's the other reason I think I mentioned to you before that I think a strategic planning effort co-sponsored by the legislative and executive branch would be one of the best things they could do together.
Okay, I know that's a lot of information, but I wanted to bring it to you to show you that some parts of the city are getting better and working better together, and there are still likely some power struggles ahead. Have any thoughts on what you've heard? Do you have faith in the systems that Jordan is outlining for us, or are you concerned about this new shift of power? Let us know what you think, will you? The email is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave us a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. By the way, you were not the only ones watching last night on our show when we interviewed Mr. Jordan. Folks from the county were as well. And they did not necessarily like it when Mr. Jordan said the city got into the homeless sheltering business because the county was not in that business. The county folks want to point out that in 2020 they opened 17 new shelters. nearly double the 9 that the city opened at that time. Okay. When I asked the city about it, they conceded that Mr. Jordan may have painted with too broad a brush, but that the city certainly felt like more could have been done.